Hey everyone, welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are live from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios tonight in Lubbock, Texas. We're live on the radio at the moment for all you guys out there on 98.7 Walk by Faith, 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. We are having some technical difficulties tonight. The guys in the studio are working hard and they're really trying to make it all work, but we may lose it tonight. So I don't know for sure exactly how that's going to go. I'm going to let those guys try to work it out. We're going to go ahead and do our show here. We're going to do it for you guys on social media, and then we're going to just see how it works out for all of those out there in radio land. So we'll go with it as long as we can go with it. And then if you lose us, you can go watch the Olympics or something, or get you something to eat, or whatever. You just have a date with your wife, whatever it is you're doing tonight. You can, or your husband. Either way, you could just go out there and try that. So, hey, it's been great. It's been a great 24 hours, really, at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. We got to speak to the WISE group last night over at the Lake Ridge Chapel. Any of you guys that are local, and if you're 50 or older, probably, I don't guess they would really care if you were younger, but it's such a great group. Wisdom Inspired Senior Education. I guess it's for the older group, but really a fun group. Probably had close to 100 people there last night. Talked about vitamin D and getting ready for the changes of the seasons. That was our thing. That was our theme last night. That seasons change. And so really had a good talk with them. I just want to share that. That's going to be our show tonight. I'm going to use that same PowerPoint for all you guys out there. You guys on the radio, we'll try to talk you through it, do the best we can. And then, but I just want to, I'll get into that. I'll get into that in just a bit. And then I had the opportunity today at lunch to go speak again. And, because we started this morning at 7:30 and adjusted this morning, had a new patient, and then I had some time in the middle of the day, said I got invited yesterday to come speak to a group. So I thank Miss Dolores. I appreciate the invitation to come speak to your group today, and gave them a quick little talk on heads, shoulders, knees, and toes. And we've done that on the show here in the past about flexor muscles, right? About the SCM muscle, and the pec muscles, the biceps, the forearms, the psoas, and the hamstring, the calf on the back side below the waist. We talked about that. We talked about how the brain was involved in that, and gave them that little rundown about, rolling over when you were 3 months old and getting your eyes up and all that sort of thing. And so it was really cool. I was really appreciative to get to speak to them and share some of the information that we do every single day here in the office. And as soon as I finished, one of the girls stood up and she caught me as I was leaving, and she said, "Do you have one of my cards, or do you have a card?" And I said, "Yes, I put some on the table back here in the back." And she said, "Because everything you just described to me is what I'm dealing with." And I was like, "Yep, that's exactly right. There's a bunch of us out there that are dealing with that. There's a bunch of people out there that are dealing with those same things." And so it was great. It was great to share that information. It was great to give all those people some encouragement and some hope and some guidance so that maybe they could live a better life. And I really appreciate the opportunity to go speak to them. If you've got somebody that you would like a group of friends, doesn't make me any difference. If you got a group that you would like me to come speak to, if you would like for me to come share some of this information with you or your group, I would be more than happy to do that. I'm passionate about it. I enjoy doing it, and we've got lots of things. We can talk about with your group. So anybody that's here local, or if you're not local and you live somewhere else that has internet, I don't know how I'd get to you if you didn't, unless you flew me out there. But if you have anywhere that has internet and you would like to set up a talk, and you would like for me to talk about some of this stuff, I'd be glad to do that. We could set up a Zoom call. We could get your group together. You guys could have a party. You could invite people over for dinner, whatever you wanted to do. And then we could present any of this stuff that we talk about on the radio. I'd be more than happy to do that for you. So we could take this as global as we've got internet. if you guys want to. you guys, I know we got a few fans that are overseas. If you guys want me to have a time where I just talk about something specific and we just break it down for you, then let me know. I'd be more than happy to do that for you guys. So I wanted to talk about this, and I wanted to kind of get into the seasons and the seasons of change, and I wanted to talk about, give you this little talk that I did last night, and there was a few controversial sentences, and I kind of blew some people's minds last night, and I just want to share it with you. I want to talk to you about it. Whenever you become a chiropractor, whenever I became a chiropractor, I don't know if it happens for all the people that become a chiropractor, but whenever you become a chiropractor, it is so different than the things that you grew up with. For most of us, we did not grow up in households that lived chiropractic wellness philosophies. I know I didn't. And it's no knock on my parents. Nobody in my town that I knew of did. Maybe there was a couple of chiropractors and maybe they did. But for the majority of the people, like, we were like everyone else. We were just people. I mean, we just, mom and dad worked. We had 3 kids. We lived in a double wide mobile home on a horse ranch. We had responsibilities. We had a little puppy dog. We had stuff that we ate all the same foods that all the other people ate. We ate pizzas and hamburgers, and mom cooked mostly. I mean, but everything at our house was, was deep fried and cornmeal or mashed potatoes and gravy, or dad was a meat and potatoes guy, those kind of people. And so, but so were all my cousins, and most of my friends were pretty much that way. I mean, all my Hispanic friends were, they were tamales and tortillas and stuff, but it was their culture too, right? So if I went over to their house and had supper or hung out with them, we might eat something a little bit different than what we ate at my house. But for the most part, nobody was talking about health, and nobody was really, I mean, man, I just remember those first conversations that I had with my brother-in-law who was in chiropractic school. He wasn't my brother-in-law at the time. He was Leslie's brother-in-law. And I remember talking to him and listening to him say things that I thought were so strange. I really did. I thought, man, this guy, he's crazy. And I would tell Leslie that. We'd leave his office and we'd get back in the car or whatever. And I'd be like, he is so crazy. He says some of the weirdest stuff. I never heard anybody else talk like that. And so you start getting around it. You start getting around those type of thoughts. You start getting around someone that thinks differently than you think, right? And you do it over time, and you start to see the effects of it, and like maybe some of that stuff is actually true. Well, when that happens, it opens up your mind to some possibilities that are just like, wow, like, okay, like maybe we're not supposed to drink Cokes. What? Maybe we're not supposed to drink milk. Oh my gosh, sacrilegious, right? Maybe Tylenol is not the reason, the lack of Tylenol in our bloodstream is not the reason that we got a headache. Maybe that's true. What? Like, those were sentences. And so what happened to me over a 12-year period of time, from the time I was 17 to the time I was 29, and I was pursuing my career as a college football coach, and as a football player and as a football coach, I was pursuing that career. And as I was going through that career, I just kept getting exposed to these conversations and these sentences. Well, eventually, I made my way into chiropractic. I made my way into Rick's office. I started working in his office. I started understanding what subluxation was, and it just made me look at things differently. And one of the things that I noticed personally about the things that I looked at differently was the seasons. I started thinking for the first time in my life, and I don't know if it was because I was in, it's not some sort of like massive little Aristotle moment or something like that I had. it's it was just a season that it was like it was a season of time, right? Um, my seasons had revolved around athletics my whole entire life. Those are the only seasons I ever knew of for my whole entire life. And at the end of the season, you wipe the slate clean, you start over, you go to off season, right? There's another one. And so then you go to the summertime, and then you're back in season, and you're undefeated again. And I did that from birth basically because Dad was a football coach when I was little. I did that from birth to the age of 29. I was in a season either with my dad and in the coaching that he did, or as a player in some sort of athletics from the year before I was in kindergarten all the way through the time I was in college, and then 6 years after that. Those are the seasons that I had. But I got exposed to this idea. And so one of the questions I remember asking myself is, why is there a fall and a winter? Like, how does this actually work? How do we transition? Why does the not how do we? That's not how it started. What is happening on Earth that transitions during the different seasons? How do the horses know to grow more hair in the wintertime? Like, how do they get that? Like, I grew up on that horse ranch. Like, how do they know how to do that? Why is it the trees start to change? Why is it the grass starts to turn, yellow? Like, what is happening? How does it know how to do that? Right? And like I said, I don't know if that's because I was in chiropractic, or I don't know if that was because I just was in my 20s or fixing to be in my 30s, you know. Um, but I just remember thinking those thoughts. Like, how does this whole thing work? Well, once you start into those types of things, what I have discovered is once you start into these expanding your mind thoughts, and I'm not talking about LSD or something like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about once you start to develop this questioning of how things are taking place, then you start to see a lot of differences in the world. And so that philosophy and that thought process, that line of thinking has evolved over 24 years of time. It's evolved to now starting to think about our bodies in the last 10 years or something. It's how do our bodies change? And when we get into seasons and we start talking about seasons, then and let me send a text. So hang on. When we start talking about seasons, there's different kinds of seasons, right? There's chronological seasons of time. I was in my teens, I was in my 20s, I was in my 30s, I was in my 40s, right I'm in my 50s. There's different times of educational seasons, like, I was in elementary school, then we were in middle school, then we were in high school, then we were in college, then we were in doctorate school, right? There's different kinds of, it was a season before I was married, there was a season since I've been married. Some people have had a season in divorce, some people have lost a spouse. There's different kinds of things that go on, right? But what I wanted to talk about is I wanted to talk about the seasons that change in our health. And I wanted you to know that as we transition, my goal for tonight's show is to say to you, look, I want you to think about, number one, there are things that are happening in your body that you cannot see. And I used the energy ball last night, and I got a whole group of people all together, and I touched the energy ball, and it lit up, and then we did the little chain of energy. I think I've showed you guys before, that we had about, I don't know, we probably had 25 people maybe. We probably had 25 people in a circle that were all holding hands, and we got the person all the way over by the door to let go of the person's hand, and then we touched the energy ball, and then the energy ball went dead, and then that person over by the door touched hands again, and then the energy ball lit up in a circle of about 25 people. And I was trying to show them that there are things that happen inside our body that we cannot see. And that is a fact. And sometimes, because we can't see them, we don't understand what's happening to us. And because we don't understand what's happening to us, that puts us in our right hemisphere. And now all of a sudden we get anxious. We start to have our fight or flight response that you guys are very familiar with, right? So I think knowing that there are physiological changes in the body, that are things that we cannot see, that are happening, I think that helps us in our transition to when we start to see things that are, when we start to have changes in our body that we don't understand, maybe we can just understand that, okay, maybe we're in a seasonal change. Like right now, one of the things I learned from Dr. Peterson that really hit home with me was, this is the time of year, if we just were to do this right here and change the slide right there, this is the time of year that it's like, for you guys that are watching the show, if you can see that slide, and I said last night, I said, I got to be really careful with that slide right there, because there's a really good chance that I could get in trouble. There's a lot of ways you can go, right? There's lots of different ways that you could go with that slide right there. One of them comes to mind is Eve, Adam and Eve. You got to watch out for that apple, right? But there's other ones that come to mind with those lips. And so I'm not going there tonight. I'm not going to do it. But what Dr. Peterson taught me was, that's something that's going on inside of my brain, that's going on inside of my body, that has to do with the changing of the seasons, is that ripe apple. That ripe apple. And if you think about this time of year that we're in right now, all of a sudden I'm getting a bunch of, I'm sorry if you guys on the radio, sorry we lost you, but we're just going to pick up to where we left off if we got it. So, but I'm getting patients come in right now, and they're bringing us bags of zucchini and squash and okra, right? The gardens have started to be fruitful at this time of year. The cantaloupe is delicious right now. If you've had any cantaloupe this week, it's really delicious. And what is actually happening inside our bodies, what's happening to us is we're getting changes that are attracting us to this ripened fruit. We're actually getting changes, and what is happening is it's increasing our desire to want to eat some of this stuff. And what is going to happen is that it's very easy for us to put on a few pounds right now. Because what our body naturally wants to do is it wants to increase its calories to increase some weight, so that we can go into the winter and we can add some weight. Now, I'm not saying you can't override the physiology. You can make sure that you decrease your calories, and you can work out extra hard, and you can do some extra things and maintain your weight. But if you happen to weigh 2 more pounds this week than you did, let's say 2 weeks ago, I just want you to know that maybe it's because we're starting to transition. And I know it's hot. I mean, we're still in summer, but we're starting to transition into that period of time that our body is getting ready for us, especially up here in the Northern Hemisphere. Our body is getting ready for us to enter the winter. Okay? And so we get attracted to the fruit. And what Dr. Peterson showed me is that it's part of the reason that we wear the lipstick. We're attracted to the lipstick just like we're attracted to the fruit. Now, I can't speak on that for very long because I don't know enough about the depths of knowing that. It's not my game. But there are some things that are happening that we cannot see that are actually related to the way that works. between the lips and the apples. And I wanted to just real quickly, there's about 3 or 4 slides. And this slide here is that seasonal variations are rarely considered a contributing component to human tissue function or health, right? How many times have you had someone have a conversation with you that revolves around the idea that, hey, we're fixing to go into fall, here's what your body's going to do. We're fixing to go into winter, here's what your body's going to do. Hey, we're about to go into spring, here's what your body's going to do. It's not a common conversation, right? Seasonal variations are rarely considered. Although many diseases and physiological processes display annual, I don't even know that, periodicities. Period is, I don't even know how to say that. Different, that you can read it if you're on there. There are physiological functions that are going on with the seasons. Okay, and I just want to show you a couple slides right here so that you can see this, that where they find more than 4,000 protein coating mRNAs in white blood cells and adipose tissues have seasonal expression profiles. Your white blood cells and your adipose tissue have seasonal expression profiles. We also find cellular composition of blood to vary by seasons. With regard to tissue function, the immune system has a profound pro-inflammatory transcriptomic profile during European winter. This all comes from the article that I have down there on the bottom. And I'm not even sure how to get that off of there. Let's see. There you go. Widespread seasonal gene expression reveals annular difference in human immunity and physiology. That's the name of the article. Those are the people that I got it from right there. So there's changes to our immune system with increased levels of soluble interleukin-6 receptor and C-reactive protein, risk biomarkers for cardiovascular, psychiatric, and autoimmune diseases that have peak incidences in winter. Okay? There are changes in your physiology and your blood that happen during the seasons. That's the point that I'm trying to share with you. I want you to see that so that you understand that, okay, like I see what he's saying there. Here's another one. Animals show seasonal changes in the pituitary and effector hormones that govern seasonality in reproduction, activity, growth, pigmentation, morphology, and migration. This adaptive physiology includes changes in body composition, organ size, and function. In general, hormone seasonality is thought to be a dominant regulator of physiological and behavioral traits in animals. Meaning that as the seasons change, our hormones change. Things are different and hormones change. And this slide, you can't really see all that great, but I just wanted to share it with you because basically what it's saying is this. Your adrenal glands release a chemical, cortisol, okay? That has an effect on other areas in your body. Your thyroid gland releases TSH. Your reproductive, your gonads, they're releasing LH and FSH. Your liver is releasing a hormone. The breasts are releasing a hormone in women. And so the point of the slide is to say, wow, okay, wait a minute. Look at the graphs. And each one of these graphs is starting in December. And so what you're getting is the December, there's high spikes in like free T3 or T4. I can't read, it's really small, but there's spikes in cortisol in female and men, ACTH in female and males. There's spikes in testosterone is one of these right here. Testosterone spikes, and then in the late summer, it starts to drop. So if you were to go get your blood test done and you were to go to get your blood test done in a certain time of the year, there are seasonal changes where your testosterone is going to be lower than it is at different times of the year. And you might go in and get any of these hormones checked. You might go get these hormones checked, and then um, and you could just have altered findings in your blood test, and it might not have anything to do with any abnormal physiology that's going on. It might have something to do with normal seasonal changes in physiology. That it, I want you to know that. I just want you to know that. Okay. So, uh, and working through this radio stuff. Okay. So having said that, and you guys know all about that right brain, left brain stuff, right? The unknown. If it's unknown to you right now why you're gaining 2 pounds, like why am I 2 pounds heavier than I was, right? Okay, if nothing changed and you didn't change your diet and you didn't, other than maybe you started eating a little bit more cantaloupe or you eat a little bit more fruit right now than you do berries, because all of a sudden this fruit is ripe and delicious and you're just thinking, man, that just tastes so good. And you might be gaining a couple of pounds. Don't freak out about it right now. Like, hey, look, it's cool. Just relax a little bit. Just relax. You're not going to go. You're not going to go to hell in a handbasket with your health by eating some cantaloupe. It's cool. Now, if you're eating a bunch of processed food and all of a sudden you're eating a bunch of sugar and you're doing all that stuff, now that's not good for you. But I don't think that's what any of us are talking about. But just know it. Just know, hey, look, there's some things going on with my health. There's some things that might be going along with the seasons. There's some things that might be related to this slightly altered food supply that I'm having in this time of the summer. And it's okay. It's okay. I might have some hormone changes. It's okay. It's like, all right, let's keep doing healthy things, and let's keep working through the seasons of life. That's the point of it, right? Let's get out of that unknown, threatening, sympathetic, over into that known, calming, parasympathetic. Just know it. Just know that it's okay. All right? That's what the slide's about. So let's get ready. Let's do a couple things, and let's talk about a couple of things that will take us from the summer into the fall. And I want to visit about this because I think it's really important, and one of the big things that I want to talk about is I want to talk about, see if I can get this going. I want to talk about vitamin D. And I want you to, I want to do it differently than we've done it in the past. I want to break it down a little bit more technical, just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit more technical, so that you feel better about vitamin D and what's going on with vitamin D and why it's important for health and why it's important to keep your vitamin D levels up in the winter. Okay? And if you guys would like some references on this, there are a couple of different things you can do. You can go to Dr. John Campbell on YouTube, and he is having a conversation with Professor David Anderson, and he talks about a book by Dr. David Grimes, which is called Vitamin D and Cholesterol. And you can get a free download copy of Vitamin D3 and the Great Biology Reset by Dr. Grimes, by Dr. Anderson. And they're having a whole conversation right there about vitamin D. And it's not a common conversation that you're going to have in the United States. And people freak out over vitamin D. And I want you to know what I'm talking about is I'm not talking about you. If you've got something you should deal with your medical doctor, then you guys know I'm not treating disease. I'm not getting outside my scope of practice. I'm not talking about something that I shouldn't be talking about. okay? I'm simply sharing with you how vitamin D works and how important it is to your health. And as a health doctor, I think that's within my scope of practice to do that, because if you're low on vitamin D and you're not functioning properly, you'll subluxate yourself, and that will cause interference in your nervous system, and that is my job. Okay? So let's just talk about this for just a second. Those are the references. Dr. John Campbell, he does, you can look for vitamin D and global change is the name of the article, of the video. And Dr. Anderson talks about it in multiple ways. Dr. Campbell, he does 2 different interviews with people about vitamin D. So I just want to share that with you. Okay. So how does vitamin D work? Okay. You have an oil on your skin. You have an oil on your skin called 7-dehydrocholesterol. 7-dehydrocholesterol. And I'm not going to get too complicated with it. But when UVB light hits your skin, that oil gets radiated or irradiated, however you say that, by the ultraviolet light, and it turns that 7-dehydrocholesterol into this stuff called cholecalciferol. And that's what we call vitamin D3. That's the vitamin D3 that there's a chemical change because of the UVB light, and it changes that oil that's on your skin and it changes it into vitamin D3. But it's not the active form. It's just a precursor to the active form. And it travels through your bloodstream. It travels through your bloodstream to your liver. And in your liver, it gets converted from this cholecalciferol to 25-hydroxycholecalciferol. It doesn't matter what it's called, and it doesn't really matter the biochemistry of it. It simply means that this vitamin D is going to go from your skin into your blood, travel to your liver, and your liver is going to alter it just a little bit. And so let's just call it 25D. Okay? It's 25D coming out of your liver. So it's very important to make sure that you have good liver function. If you want to have overall health, and as we're talking about this, you really have to get a big picture. You really have to stay big picture oriented right here. Because last night at the talk, I had some really good questions when it was over, and they weren't big picture oriented because we are so conditioned to be allopathic in our thinking. We are so conditioned to say that, well, I treat this with this. I have this problem, so I'm going to take some vitamin D for this. I have, man, one of the ladies said, whenever my neck hurts, I use magnesium lotion, and it makes it feel better. That's allopathic. Allopathic means opposite of. Allopathic means if you have a headache, I'm going to give you something that's anti-headache. If you have allergies, which are histamines, you have an increased amount of histamines, I'm going to give you an antihistamine. If you have increased stomach acid in your esophagus, I'm going to give you an anti-acid. Those are the opposite of, and that's allopathic. I'm going to treat something with a chemical, some sort of substance. I'm going to treat that to be the opposite of what you have, so that whatever you have stops. Okay? So while we're talking about this, I just want you to, I really want you to keep a big picture. Because when we talk about the importance of vitamin D, then we need to also talk about the importance of having a healthy liver. So now let's talk about the things that don't cause us, the things that cause us to not have a healthy liver, right? What would they be? Alcohol, right? Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that too much alcohol destroys your liver, right? Okay. Another thing that destroys your liver is fructose. That's what's in the alcohol that destroys your liver, is the fructose, which is the same thing that is in all of your fruit juices, orange juice, apple juice, cherry juice, whatever the juice may be, those are all fructose. Same thing to your liver. Doesn't have your liver functioning well. Sugar. Sugar's 50% glucose and 50% fructose. So sugar is going to decrease the function of your liver and damage the function of your liver. Okay? Medications. How many of you that take medications have to go in every 3 or 4 months and get your liver enzymes checked? Right? Medications can cause damage to your liver. What's another thing? Metformin. Right? How many diabetics out there on metformin know that the functions of metformin? And you guys know how I feel about that. We've talked about that multiple times. Metformin destroys the mitochondria, clogs up the mitochondria in the liver, and causes the liver cell not to be able to function. That's why you can't dump the glucose into the bloodstream. That's another thing that messes up your liver. So if we need to convert this vitamin D3 that's in our skin, and we need to convert it into this 25D in our liver, it's super important that we have good liver function. We want to have a healthy liver in order to have the conversion of vitamin D. We want to have a healthy liver for lots of other reasons besides that, but we definitely want to have a healthy liver for that reason. And the purpose of what really vitamin D has evolved to, and you can listen to Dr. Anderson talk about this on that YouTube channel that I was telling you about, the YouTube conversation. But one of the main things that the vitamin D does for us is it helps us absorb our calcium from our intestinal tract. If we have proper levels of vitamin D, we will absorb proper levels of calcium, okay? But there's a feedback loop. There's a feedback inhibitory effect on the conversion reaction that keeps 25D levels constant and allows for the storage of vitamin D3 in the liver. Once converted, it only lasts a few weeks. Once we take vitamin D and we convert it to 25D, then it's only going to last for a couple of weeks. But the vitamin D in the vitamin D3 can be stored for months in the liver. So when we don't have enough sunshine, we still have some vitamin D that's stored in our liver so that we keep our vitamin D levels relatively healthy if we need to. If we ever get stuck when we can't get outside in the sunshine. If we ever get stuck whenever we cover our bodies, and I'm going to get into that in just a minute, okay? There's an inhibitory effect in the conversion, and I want to talk about that in just a second, okay? All right, so let's understand it. We got the oil in the skin, hits the UVB rays, turns to vitamin D, goes to the liver, turns to 25D, and now we got to get it to the kidneys. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that 25D and we're going to move it to the kidneys. Okay? And in the kidney, we're going to tag another piece to it, and it's going to take us to 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol, and that is the active form of vitamin D. Now, that's where almost every cell in your body has vitamin D receptors. So now you got the active form. You got the lights on with vitamin D. Now we're ready to rock and roll. The 125D is, and you'll see it on a blood test, 125 OHD is what that is, the active form. That means that it got converted in the skin, it got converted in the liver, it got converted in the kidneys, and now we're ready to go. Now we can work with that. It's the most active form of vitamin D. In the absence of kidneys, vitamin D loses almost all of its effectiveness. Okay? And one thing that I want you to know is that high calcium concentrations drive down 125D. And in another PowerPoint that I have, I was showing them last night this other PowerPoint. Let me find it for you because I want to read this. I want to read this slide. It's in my Power of Food PowerPoint. But I want to read this slide to you. Because it says right here, high calcium concentrations drive down 125D. If your calcium levels are high, you're going to drive down your vitamin D because it's the feedback loop that's going on in your intestines, right? If you don't have enough calcium in your blood, then your vitamin D levels go up to pull that calcium into your blood because your nervous system uses calcium and your brain uses calcium. You need calcium for the way that your nervous system functions to a certain extent. But we don't need high levels of calcium in our brain. It doesn't serve us well. It doesn't do us good to have high levels of calcium in our brain. And this is where it got controversial last night, that I really tripped a bunch of people up, because we have become so driven in our culture to take calcium all the time. We've been lied to about milk and how we need to drink milk to get our calcium, which is false, and it has been false for the entire existence of a human being. It has never been true, ever in the history of mankind, that a human being needed to drink cow's milk in order to get enough calcium for them to function. Not unless that human being was starving to death. Maybe they might borrow some calcium from a mom's milk, but there's plenty of research out there that tells us no, that's not true. Okay, we're so driven to take calcium, take your calcium, take your calcium. And one of the questions I asked the group last night was, I asked them, how many conversations have you had with anybody on earth? Anybody, your medical doctor, anybody in your family, your best friend, the girls down at the country club or at the card playing place, or if you do playing canasta or whatever you girls do, or mahjong or whatever. I don't think that was right, but whatever that word is, I don't know how that game is. Any of you girls any guys, anybody, anywhere has ever talked about taking calcium that didn't relate to bone? Have you ever had a conversation with your doctor? Have you ever had a conversation about taking calcium that didn't have something to do with bones? And nobody raised their hand last night. Nobody in the audience raised their hand at all. And I'm like, yeah. How many of you have had the conversation about calcium in your brain? How many times have you had a conversation with your medical doctor about, hey, is all this calcium good for my brain? And nobody wants to have that conversation. So high calcium concentrations drive down vitamin D. When calcium goes up, this comes from Dr. Chestnut in the wellness guy. You guys know Dr. Chestnut. And this was actually, this was from William Cromie, Harvard Gazette, that I got this. And I think I got this slide from Dr. Chestnut in his research. But when calcium goes up, blood levels of 125D go down. When 125D goes down, IGF-1 goes up. Now, that's insulin growth factor 1. It doesn't matter what it is, but just listen to this. High levels of IGF-1 significantly increase the risk of colorectal cancer, breast, and prostate cancer. Medical researchers have found, and that came from the Harvard Gazette. Let me read it again. High levels of IGF-1 significantly increase the risk of colorectal, breast, and prostate cancer. IGF-1 goes up when vitamin D goes down. Vitamin D goes down when calcium goes up. Okay? What I have come to understand about the way that this works is that if you would just get your vitamin D levels right, you will absorb all of the calcium you need from your food, especially from your green leafy vegetables. You will get the calcium out of your food if you will keep your vitamin D levels to an adequate level. Okay? I just think that's important for everyone. I just think it's important for everyone to know. Okay? So the argument is, hey doc, I'm out in the sunshine all the time. Like, I should get plenty of vitamin D if I'm in the sunshine. Okay, that's true. If you are spending enough time in the sunshine, you should get plenty of vitamin D. And one way you can know that is to check your vitamin D levels. So take a blood test. We can do them here in the office. Go to your medical doctor, wherever you want to do it. Prick your finger, take your vitamin D test, find out what your vitamin D levels are, because you may or may not be true to yourself by saying that it's the vitamin D levels that I'm fine because I'm outside in the sun. Okay, it's not a reliable transition unless you're really out there a lot. Now, these guys on Dr. Campbell's podcast are the ones that told me about the Maasai warriors in Africa and how those guys, those are black-skinned people, really dark skinned people that are you guys know what they look like, and those guys have vitamin D levels up to 140. Their vitamin D levels are up to 140. Okay, then they have an internal system that kicks that off, that turns it off and doesn't let them drive their vitamin D levels up. And if you Google it, if you just do it, if you Google it anywhere, because I did it last night, that you can just let's see, how much is too much vitamin D, and you'll start getting Healthline right here. Okay. The UL for vitamin D is 4,000 IUs per day, and that's not even normal. If you go to Mayo Clinic, the main consequence of vitamin D toxicity is a buildup of calcium in your blood called hypercalcemia. Vitamin D at the Mayo Clinic, Very Well Health, they get all this stuff. They get into 400 milligrams. I mean, 400 is IUs of vitamin D, right? Can you get too much vitamin D? The Cleveland Clinic, the Very Well. You could go through all that stuff on the internet. And what you're going to find out is the same exact stuff. It's the same exact stuff all the time. But if you listen to Dr. Anderson speak, who had done a lot of research on vitamin D, he said he takes 100,000 IUs of vitamin D per month. 100,000 IUs of vitamin D per month. And because he wants to get his vitamin D levels up to 125. Okay, that's a different take on things. All right, so we get scared off because if it gets over 30 or 40, and then we get scared off. I just want to show you that. I want to show you this slide right here. I want to show you and say, look, in the spring and summer, 25% of the body, if you consider the hands, the face, the neck, and the arms, is exposed to sun, and in these seasons, about 8 to 10 minutes of sun exposure at noon produces the recommended amount of vitamin D. Okay, that's what the research article said. If you had 8 to 10 minutes of 25% of your body at noon, you would be getting all the vitamin D that you needed, and you can find that out by checking your vitamin D levels. In the winter, only 10% of the body is exposed, and nearly 2 hours of sun exposure at noon is needed to produce sufficient amounts of vitamin D. You got to go from 8 to 10 minutes to 2 hours when you're in the wintertime. Why? Because the sun and the earth have a different relationship in the change of the season. It's in a different spot. The sun is closer to the earth in the summer for us. That's why it's hot. And then the sun and the earth move apart. The sun doesn't move. The earth moves away from the sun in the winter, and now we don't get the same level of light, so it takes 2 hours of work. But we're not going to be outside for 2 hours at noon. Almost none of us will be, right? Here's another study comparing the geographic extremes of Miami and Boston. In the summer in Miami, with 25% of the body exposed, a person would need only 3 minutes of sun exposure to get enough vitamin D. That same person, when placed in Boston in the winter, would need 23 minutes at noon to produce enough vitamin D. Then again, winter in Boston is really cold, so you probably would only have 5% or less of your body exposed to the sun. Thus, the 23 minutes in the sun would need to be stretched to more than 2 hours in the sun. In addition, if you have darker skin pigment, the time needed increases. the whole point of that is to say this. We're going to get into the fall and we're going to need supplementation of vitamin D. We're not going to be able to hold our levels as we go into the winter. And it's one of those things that I think is so important for us. Now, there are people that disagree with me in my own town. There's a prominent doctor. I have the utmost respect for him. We probably should get together and discuss this, but he doesn't think you should take it at all. You should get it from your cod liver. And if you can maintain your levels, I don't care where you get it from. It doesn't make me any difference. To me, it's all the same. And what my research says, and I've mentioned it to you guys before, is that the vitamin D that we get and that we take, it comes from sheep's wool, which is the oil in the sheep that they drain out. They squeeze all that oil out of there, and that's where the vitamin D is. That's the sunshine that hit the sheep that changes it for us, right? Okay. Don't be freaked out because you take fish oil from a fish, you eat steak from a cow, you eat sausage from a pig. There's all kinds of things that you eat that don't be freaking out because all of a sudden you're getting oil from a sheep, okay? What I have discovered, or my research says, is that in the process of getting the fish oil into the bottle, they destroy the vitamin D anyway, and they substitute it back with that same vitamin D that we take. So I do think it's important for us to take and maintain our vitamin D levels. I think it's important because the actions of 125D, there's effects in the intestines, kidneys, and bone that increase the absorption of calcium and phosphate. There's a reduction of inflammation. There's cell growth. There's neuromuscular involvement. There's immune function. There's glucose metabolism. There's all of those things that are involved with vitamin D. It's so important for us. And one of the things that I got shown, one of those weird sentences that you get when you're in chiropractic school, maybe it's not flu season. Maybe we're not going into flu season. Maybe what we're going into is low vitamin D season. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe the people that died from COVID might have had low vitamin D levels. Maybe the flu hits us hardest in the winter, not because the flu is around, because I'm pretty sure the flu is around in the summer, but because our vitamin D levels get lower. Okay? There's our immune function, our glucose metabolism, the way that our nerves and our muscles work. All of that stuff has to do. Do you know, and I mentioned this last week or two, there's almost no MS at the equator? Look it up. That's a true statement. There's almost no MS at the equator anywhere around the earth. MS is up northern and southern hemispheres away from the equator where there's less sunshine and there's colder weather. Even in Australia. Australia has higher levels of, even though they're in the middle of that. You think of Australia, you think of sunshine, right? There's more MS in Australia and in Europe and northern United States than there is around the equator. Why? Because our nervous system, our musculoskeletal system, has a lot to do with our vitamin D levels. If we keep those levels high, we can keep ourselves healthier as we go into the winter. That's really the main thing of the show. The other slides that I have that I just wanted you to see is this slide on sleep. Individuals reporting less than 7 hours of sleep per night. This comes from Matthew Walker on Why We Sleep. You guys know that. We've referenced that book lots of times, right? Individuals reporting less than 7 hours of sleep per night are 3 times more likely to get infected with the common cold. You're 3 times more likely to get the common cold if you're getting less than 7 hours. Women getting 5 hours or less of sleep per night are almost 70% more likely to develop pneumonia. Think about that. This all comes from Matthew Walker. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not giving your immune system an opportunity to fight and function properly. Sleep is vital. One of my guys said today, I'm so tired. He said, last night I didn't go to bed till 4 o'clock because I was looking at my phone, listening to my favorite singers from The Voice. until 4 o'clock. And he had to get up at 7. Got 3 hours of sleep. He's wondering why he's tired. He thinks maybe I ought to go check my testosterone levels. I'm like, nope. Maybe you should just go to sleep. Maybe that'd be a better idea, right? Sleep is important. Next thing is exercise is important. Acute exercise is an immune system adjuvant, and that improves defense, activity, and metabolic health. We all know this. We all know this stuff about exercise, okay? Exercise training has anti-inflammatory influences mediated through multiple pathways. Exercise is vitally important for us in the winter. It's vitally important for us in the summer. It's vitally important for us in the spring and the fall as well. But if we would keep our vitamin D levels high, and we would get our exercise, and we would get our sleep, those are 3 things that we could do that would help us transition into the fall and be healthier as we go into the fall. It's really a big deal. And that last one, as you guys know, is stay away from the sugar. Although glucose is vital for the proper function of the immune cells and their proliferation, a high amount of glucose may lead to impaired function of the immune system and pathological conditions. We do need glucose. We can get the glucose from eating the proper foods. When we don't move our feet, when it's cold outside and we don't walk and we don't move our feet, then we stop firing our brain. And then when our dopamine levels get low, then we want to eat a cookie. That's how it works. Now we eat the cookie and we decrease our immune system, and we're on a cycle that makes us less healthy. Okay? Stay away from that sugar. So take home right here, and B vitamins are the other one. I didn't get to B vitamins. Maybe I'll get to them tomorrow night. But the take home right here, take your vitamin D. Know your vitamin D levels. Don't be afraid to get your vitamin D levels high. Okay? Know your vitamin D levels. Take your vitamin D. Take your fish oil, like always. Get your sleep. Get your exercise. Eat your healthy foods that are low in glycemic load. If you don't know what that means, go to Justin Richards on Instagram and Insulin Resistance 1 and look him up. He'll show you all of these foods. He'll show you how your blood sugar spikes when you drink a Coke, how your blood sugar doesn't spike when you eat vegetables. It's simple as that. Eat your protein, eat your eggs and bacon, your blood sugar is not going to spike. Eat your biscuits and gravy, your blood sugar is going to spike. He'll show it to you. It's good stuff. That's the show for tonight. I appreciate you guys. I hope that was helpful. You guys, if you want to share it with your friends, please do. Share it with your family. Don't let your family not know this information. Don't let your friends not know this information. If you have questions for me, please send them to me. I'd be glad to visit with you and talk to you about it. You can text me at 806-794-0400, or you can send me a message on Facebook or any of our social media pages, or you can or call me at the office on that same number. I'd be glad to visit with you. Thanks for watching the show. I hope you guys have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 6.